Hi, nice to see you again. Today I'd like to talk about Canada. Um, I've kind of thought that I should do this video for quite a while now, but I didn't for a variety of reasons. There's this fiction that is Canada as a country. Canada does not exist as an independent country. It's not a democracy. It's constitutional monarchy is what they call them. That's a dictatorship because the crown, the King Charles now, decides everything in this country. And the Constitution of Canada, which was supposed to have been amended in 1982 but wasn't, they gave us the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is identical to the United Nations 1948 Declaration of Human Rights internationally, that all human beings on Earth are, enjoy the benefit of that thing existing, although it's ignored most of the time. But in Canada, they just copy and pasted the whole thing in 1982 and came up with the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is almost identical to that 1948 United Nations document. And they said, yeah, see, like now we're a country. Well, no, we're not. We're not, and I'm going to prove that to you today. I know that for Canadians this will be a bitter pill to swallow, and some of you will probably be starting to cut me off now because denial is very strong poison. But you really need to listen to this, because I hope that one day a country called Canada can exist, but it doesn't at the moment. This first came to my attention in 1982 when they came up with the Canada Act, and Pierre Trudeau, who is Justin Trudeau's alleged father, he came up with this in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and all of the media was blaring that this was so great for Canada because now we were more free and more independent. But as you can see on your screen there, that one that I've highlighted with the green arrow, subsection 3 of Part 7, amendments to the Constitution of Canada shall be made only in accordance with the authority contained in the Constitution of Canada, which this is not. This is an amendment. The 1982 Canada Act is an amendment. But we have to go to the Constitution of Canada, which is actually the British North America Act of 1867 that was drafted by the slaves and servants of Her Majesty Queen Victoria. And that is the law of the land in Canada to this day. Nothing has changed. And to prove it, I'm going to go over parts of the British North America Act. They renamed it to the Constitution of Canada in the 1930s so people wouldn't get too nosy. But this is well known to Freemasons. It's also known to the politicians in the UK, and I'll tell you why in a second. But executive power, the executive government and authority of and over Canada, is hereby declared to continue and be vested in the Queen, or the King, which is Charles. Now, the head of state in Canada is the Governor General, who is appointed by the Queen or the King, and they're advised by the Privy Council, which is a collection of monarchy loyalists who are basically picked for their fanatical devotion to the King or the Queen, and they advise the Governor General. But the Governor General has some autonomy. They have to answer to the King or Queen, but they don't have to take advice from anybody. And you'll notice the Canadian government is not even mentioned in here, because these people are outside of the government, but they are the real power. And at the top of this paragraph you can see all powers, authorities, and functions which under any act of the Parliament of Great Britain or of the Parliament of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, yada yada, they actually have authority over the Canadian government, the Parliament of the UK. That'll be surprising to some people. And I put this up for the bottom sentence, but at the top, it shall be lawful for the Queen, if Her Majesty thinks fit, to authorize Governor General from time to time to appoint any person or persons jointly or severally, blah, blah, blah. Since when have you seen a free country's constitution contain that sentence, if Her Majesty thinks fit? If you're a Canadian, that tells you where you live. At the bottom, there shall be one Parliament for Canada consisting of the Queen, an upper house, the Senate, and the House of Commons, all way down the food chain. Justin Trudeau, his dad Pierre, who was Prime Minister before him, have no power. They are basically just servants of the Governor General and the Privy Council and the King or Queen, and probably any other members of the royal family as well. But the heirs and assigns, of course, yeah, they would qualify. Distribution of legislative powers of the Parliament. It shall be lawful for the Queen or King, by and with the advice and consent of the Senate and House of Commons, which the Queen or King runs, to make laws for the peace, order, and good government of Canada in relation to all matters not coming within the classes of subjects by this Act, assigned exclusively to the legislatures of the provinces, yada yada. So those things would be the public debt and property, and you can't own private property in Canada because of this. David Lametti said it all. Put a clip of him at the end. He's the Justice Minister for Canada. He would know. No one has a right to private property in Canada. Full stop. Why? Well, because it's all owned by the King or the Queen. 2, the regulation of trade and commerce. 3, raising of money by any mode or system of taxation. 4, borrowing of money on the public credit. And people in Canada will know this because any court documents or any problems with the Canadian Revenue Agency or any payments to the government for any reason, it is always the titles that suit His or Her Majesty that are used. And all oaths are sworn to the King or Queen, including the Prime Minister. And there's plenty of clips of Justin and all the other Prime Ministers swearing allegiance not to the people of Canada because they're just the proles, the peasants, the subjects, the colonists. You know, they swear the allegiance to the crown. And I know that a lot of people are going to be surprised by this, but I'll put everything in the show notes so that you can, you know, confirm all of this stuff for yourself, because I know it's a bitter pill to swallow, but Canada only exists as a fictional country. It's not really a democracy, you know. When Quebec tried to separate back in the day before the day, they had the votes. Not many people know that. I think a lot of Freemasons know that, but they had all the votes. And when René Lévesque went to Pierre Trudeau to work out the details, I think they were both lawyers. René Lévesque was the, I think it was Premier of Quebec, but they had voted to separate. They were successful. That's not what they said in the media, but he went to Pierre Trudeau, who was sitting with a big bag on his desk, and René Lévesque said, "Is it true?" Meaning that there's no government of Canada and that the whole country's owned by the Queen. And Pierre said, "Yeah, it's true," and he shoved the bag toward him. And of course, René Lévesque was never the same again. But Pierre Trudeau, he's an icon in Canada. He was just a nobody, you know. He was just a frickin' serf, like all the rest of the Canadians that are delusional enough to think that all of the laws and the diktats of assholes like King Charles actually have any legitimacy at all. You know, they don't. But there's no Canada. It's a fiction. You know, and I'm never rude to Canadians because they're very good to me. They're very polite. But since 1982, when I was in college, when I read that supposed good news document and ended up finding my way back to the British North America Act, it was depressing as hell, and it has been ever since, because anybody that isn't a Freemason doesn't know what I'm talking about, you know? Yeah, there's no Canada. There won't be until we start one, you know, unless you want to call it North America North, but I don't think that'll fit on a beer can. Molson North American North? Not too catchy. Yeah, no country. No country. No government with any power. All the power is across the water in the hands of a psychopath, and they're trying to run you off your property, and that's why they're running this big putsch, this worldwide attempt at tyranny. And if you're in part of the Commonwealth and other parts of the world, you'll know, especially in Australia, 'cause it says so in the first paragraph or two, your colony, you know? Yeah, your governments don't have any sway whatsoever. They can't even make a law and make it stick. They need royal assent. That should have been your first guess, because it's in every article everywhere. If they mention a law in the newspaper, on the media, it's always whether it's received royal assent or not. Why the hell do you think that is? Well, it's because the government doesn't have the ability to do that. Only the king or queen does, or their representatives. You know, it's time people grew up. Their laws don't mean anything. They don't have any rights. We're natural men and women of the land. We are not of this and we're not of that. Stop calling yourselves that. At least in countries that are part of the Commonwealth. Because you're not your country. Because your country's fiction. People are waking up now. But these assholes drove us to this. It was inevitable that sooner or later people would come to this realization. Everybody that lives in Canada, there's 38 million of them. You own 1/38 millionth of this land that they called Canada. It's yours.
Well, look, we'll obviously tailor the provisions so that it could withstand a court challenge. You don't have an absolute right to own private property in Canada.